Frank also released his trade targets list last week, expanded the list from, I believe it was 30, somewhere around there, down to up to 40. Sorry. The craziest name on there is obviously Mikko Rantanen. Not a realistic fit for Edmonton, unfortunately, unless somehow they decide to trade a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, for example. But 50% on Rantanen would be awesome. But like you said, like, let's live in a hypothetical world, because it seems to be becoming very much a reality at this point, that Evander Kane comes back for Edmonton before the trade deadline. And I would also like to say, before we dive too into this, I would welcome back Evander Kane into the lineup with the way that the Oilers are lacking so much physicality and scoring at the moment. That, like, it wouldn't be such a bad thing for him to be back. And people won't like that cliche of like, oh, it's like a trade deadline. And it's like, this isn't a guy that was injured in like the middle of November and is returning. This is a guy you haven't seen all season. You actually don't know what he looks like on this team. So kind of is like a trade deadline ad, you know what I mean? But on Frank's list, again, we'll live in a world of like Kane comes back. Is there a defenseman? You mentioned and Brian Dumoulin. Is he the number one guy you would think you would want to see them kind of squeeze in?
I think when I'm looking at just realistic acquisitions, and when I'm looking at realistic, I'm assuming, okay, like you can get the contract down to like a 1.5 or something like that. I feel like it's going to be a lot harder to fit in maybe a $4+ million contract. Even if the other team retains it down to 2, then you probably need a third team to retain it down to 1. That's difficult for a team like the Oilers, who don't have a tremendous amount of draft and prospect capital. I don't think that's an easy move for them to execute. So that is why I look at Dumoulin, who has a lot of playoff experience playing with the Pittsburgh Penguins, won 2 Stanley Cups with them. That's why I look at him as a realistic option, because of the $3.15 million average annual value. Maybe there's a contract that moves back to Anaheim there, but if it turns out that Evander Kane doesn't come back, and all of the speculation that we've had all year is that the Oilers will have all this money to do moves at the trade deadline. If it does wind up working for them that way, then I think the player that I'm looking at is Jamie Oleksiak from the Seattle Kraken, who's
be awesome.
Yeah, he's been mentioned a few times, and visualizing him next to Darnell Nurse, that could be the shutdown defensive pairing that the Oilers have been kind of craving this season, especially recently. The team's bleeding goals against, and Devin Dubnyk talked to you guys, former Oilers goalie who knows all about this. He talked to you guys on Oilers Nation every day earlier this week, and he said the Oilers need a D-man back there who can calm things down.
Yeah, the chat didn't love it so much when he said veteran defenseman, considering the Oilers are like one of the older teams in the league. But I think sometimes the wording can be taken out of context. But like, he's right. Like, a lot of these teams that you look around the league at, their top 4 is like rock solid. Like, you look at Vegas, for example, like that blue line is legit, and like they have veteran players, and like I don't think the Oilers. You mentioned this too on Oilers Nation every day. Like, I don't think they miss Cody Ceci.
Yeah,
but sometimes I think they miss someone who can kind of be that patient guy. Like, you can put out there in certain situations, and he's not going to like screw you up. He's going to keep.
There's aspects of the game where they miss probably both Cody Ceci and Vinny Desharnais. They miss the aspect. I don't think the penalty kill is as good this year as it was last year, due in part because those two are gone. Warren Fogel's gone. I mean, there was a lot of roster turnover, and I don't think every single hole has been replaced. Like the Oilers going into June of 2025, of course, there's still the trade deadline, but they're not the exact same team as they were in April, May, June of 2024. So it'll be interesting to see what they do wind up doing.
Yeah, Jamie Oleksiak, currently number 11 on Frank's list. He has 1 year remaining at $4.6 million. Obviously, definitely not an offensive juggernaut by any means. But again, that is not what the Oilers need. He only has 13 points in 57 games this season for Seattle. Also, if you didn't know, he's 6'7", and he can skate very, very well. Someone on the list I'm looking at, if they're looking for like a cheaper option, they could probably make a deal work for Connor Murphy. And I know that's not the most glamorous name of that. He's a right shot defenseman currently on the Chicago Blackhawks. He makes $4.4 million. Another year remaining on his deal. If you can get that down retained again to 2.2, then you can make it work. And maybe they throw John Klingberg back the other way, for example, just to kind of make the money work a lot easier. But yeah, Connor Murphy is someone that I certainly do not mind. And you mentioned, like I said, Brian Dumoulin is someone I looked back previously on Oilers Nation every day, and Dumoulin's numbers are very similar to what Brett Kulak's were when the Oilers went and acquired him. Granted, Brett Kulak a few years younger than what Brian Dumoulin is right now, but like you said, he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. It was earlier in his career, but like, I don't think those moments kind of escape players too quickly.